What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are at Foundation Packing, Receiving, and Shipping, and we are talking about Precious Child and the 5 most important discs in my bag. But before we dive in, I have to ask, how are you doing today, Isaac? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
So, quick update because I know people are asking and checking in. Elbow is feeling significantly better. Worked with coach to kind of work on a swing path that doesn't have me sort of crunching so hard. We had kind of even toyed around with me going back to more of a pop the arm out, bring it back in, but I'm just trying to avoid that at all costs. So did some changes, feeling good about that. Gonna take some time. I ended up just withdrawing, not even playing. I ended up withdrawing from a tier that I was supposed to play at the end of May. Not because it's like, okay, do I think I could have pushed through? Sure. But, you know, not trying to take a spot from someone that knows they're going to be able to compete, knows they're going to be able to finish it. So I wanted to make sure that that freedom and that space was there for them. But we still want to be creative with the content and honestly an opportunity to kind of discuss some topics and things like that. So like I said, elbows healing. Thank you guys for checking in. But I want to talk about the 5 most important discs in my bag. And instead of just being like, here's why I love them, here's what they do, I kind of want to talk about the shots that they provide for me, as well as alternative options that you guys can look at and why you may choose to throw that disc. So let's go ahead and dive in to number 1. First disc, as someone who feels like I have a pretty good forehand, I would say I have a more than above average forehand, is going to be the Dynamic Discs Raider. Now, here's what I'm using this disc for. If I am throwing this on a backhand, it's going to go straight with a fade. And then if I'm throwing it on forehand, it's going to go pretty straight with some fade. And if I really yam on it, I'm probably going to end up putting a little force over just a little bit and just causing a little bit of left to right movement. This isn't one that I'm necessarily like hard flexing and things like that. But this disc, if you have a forehand that I'm going to say goes 300 feet, like a distance driver, you're looking for something that's relatively flat usually, as well as feels pretty comfortable. If this brim is too big for you and you have a really hard time getting your fingers on the inside like this, then I suggest going for an 11 speed or even a 10 speed of sorts. The Vulture or the Wraith are really good alternatives here for easy flip up forehand. Or if you're learning the forehand and you don't have that power forehand disc where you feel like I see a shot for righties moving left to right and I need to get up and around the corner, some other alternatives that I'm going to look at for just a power forehand, a distance forehand disc. So I'm using this all the time. In fact, we actually played the weekly here yesterday, and at hole 7 at Lynchburg College, I was able to grab an eagle throwing this on a par 4 with a forehand, just trying to yam it as hard as I could. So the Raider, really, really phenomenal option. But like I said, if you don't have a power forehand, a Raptor, a Felon, anything like that, if you need that overstable option, could be really good for you. If you don't have, like, let's say 350 feet of distance, getting the flight out of this and getting the flight out of a Felon or a Raptor is going to be extremely similar. And then I know my friend Jason, who you guys have seen on the channel before, Jason uses a Crave as his forehand disc. ABB, All Business Brad, co-host on In the Bag podcast, he uses, I believe it is a Trace or a Lift for a little bit of flip up forehand for him as well. So really a couple different ways you can attack this, but having a distance forehand disc is essential to my game, super important. And of course, Sasuke is probably one of my favorite characters in all of anime. Naruto will always be up there in my top 3. I know it's one of the big 3. So I had to go with the Sharingan, and I have a Rinnegan as well. I had them on Destroyers, but then when I decided to go to Raiders this year, I had to get my guy Justin to dye up one of these Sharingans, and I really love the spin dye that he put on the edge. Makes it look really clean. All right, next up on the list, we have the Passion. This is an ESP Jawbreaker plastic, but honestly, the first Passion I got was the Ledgestone. I think it was Z Glow, and it was a pretty stable Passion, especially considering as Passions go. The second Passion I actually got was this guy right here. Then my third Passion was just a stock ESP Passion. So the ESP Jawbreaker, beautiful run. I think this was a USDGC only run, but this specific Passion, and I think a lot of discs can do this, where it kind of slotted in is no matter how hard I throw it, it's always going to flip out. Unless I just like, throw it super soft. But the ability for this thing to flip up and ride straight. Now, if I really give it the means, like it's going to flip up, ride straight, and have some turn to it. But what's really wonderful about this is a type of disc that I think every single person should have. A fairway driver that is understable enough that you can throw it and it'll flip up every single time. Now, for some of you, it's still going to have some fade at the end. Then that's fine. But the ability to throw it sort of smooth and not feel like you've got to hit it super hard to get that disc to flip up and ride straight is super, super helpful. And I say fairway driver because if you go for the distance drivers, those big rims are going to get in the way. And it's going to be it might be tougher to do that for you. But this easy fairway driver, flip up and ride straight, that's going to make hitting gaps super easy. That's going to make sort of throwing in the woods even easier. And if you really want that distance potential, you can experiment when you find a disc that you can flip all the way up and see how you want to move it, things like that. So the Passion has been super, super fun for me. Some alternatives that I'm going to recommend, if we stay inside the Discraft family, I used the Sting for a long time in this. The Archer, another Discraft disc that does this extremely well. I know other people are going to talk about the Insanity can tend to do that pretty well. If we go to the Prodigy lineup, the F7 is a fantastic disc that does this for a lot of people. If the F7 is too flippy, head over to the F5. Very, very similar options. When thinking Trilogy, I'm thinking the Maverick by Dynamic Disc does this really well. I know the Maul by Latitude 64 does this really well. And even, I know Molt used to love the Stag from Westside Disc. So many great discs in this slot. And if you're someone, let's say, oh, Mr. YouTube man, I throw on Anheuser all the time, so how am I supposed to flip something up? Tell you a mold that people are sleeping on. DGA Discs, it's the trimmer. This was the fairway paradox, the fairway Rolo, before people realized it. 6.5 minus 4.1. I actually have this disc in my bag for the next step over in understability from what this slot does, where it's going to flip up easy every time and turn every time. The trimmer, it's a disc that honestly even most people who carry DGA don't have, but we got it here. Amazing disc, and has like a very shallow rim, feels a lot more like a mid-range, but it flies like a fairway drive. Third on the list gonna have to be the MVP reactor. So here's what I love the reactor for. This is a fission reactor. Thank you, Treesus. This dyed by Justin over at Disco Dyes. This is a mold that I'll never forget when I threw the reactor for the first time. I was on hole 5 at Magnolia Links Disc Golf Course, and Mike came up to me and he was like, hey, I was throwing at the time, I think I had a Truth or something like that in my bag, maybe a rock. Mike was like, hey, have you ever tried the reactor? And I was like, no, I've never tried the reactor. So I threw it on a 308-foot hole and absolutely parked it with this mid-range. And I was like, that's kind of dirty. So what did I do? I got one, it was good, and I put it in the bag. But when I went to Innova, one of the struggles that I had was what this reactor does for me is it flies super straight, and at the very end of its flight, it fades. That is a extremely reliable flight that I want, especially in a mid-range, where I'm looking in that 270 to 320 range, that I just want to be able to know I can pump this out there, I can throw it hard, I can throw it flat, I can throw it however, it's going to fly straight, and then it's going to fade. What's also beautiful about this is that I have a 1-2 punch for mold minimalization. I have the fission reactor, but then I also have one of these Eclipse reactors in my bag as well. And so let's just say like this is the flight of them both at first, and then that's how the flight differs. This one's going to fade a little bit, but this one's going to fade hard every single time. I've had the same glow reactor in my bag for a long time at this point. Basically, I've had the same glow reactor in my bag since I left Team Innova at the end of 2021. Now, alternatives that I used this slot for, and where I honestly struggled in other companies that I've been to. So Rock 3s, the modern Rock 3 is like super straight, but it doesn't always have that finish because it's so straight. Buzzes can be so straight, but not necessarily have that finish. EMAG Truths, so straight, may not have that finish. I love the reactor because I want to know that it's going to finish at the end of its flight. Here's why I really appreciate having that finish because it kind of helps with an error if I mess up in throwing, because let's be honest, we're not robots. We mess up sometimes. So if I'm trying to throw it and I know that I have to throw it straight every single time and it has to stay straight, that puts a lot of pressure on me, because what if my angle of release is just a little bit off, that I'm going to pull it one way or the other, and that is definitely not going to help me out. But if I know that it's going to have this finish, that means I can throw it down a certain line, or I can even pull it a little right. I have some freedom to pull it right when I'm trying to put a little more on it, which is then going to cause it to still fall back towards the basket. And most often, most disc golf holes that I think about rarely have a shot set up where it's just like 18 holes of throw it dead straight and let it drop right there. There's almost always a throw it dead straight down a tunnel and then let it have a little finish. Let it have a little finish. So I love the ability, I love the reliability of this. So I've talked about 3 discs that I think don't necessarily have this finish. Obviously the Reactor does a great job of this. Discs that I do think have this finish, that have this flight. The Trust by Latitude 64 definitely has this flight. The Rock 3 does have the stability for you. The Rock X3 might be a nice complement. I would say the Wasp or the Malta could be good alternatives. Now the Wasp and the Malta, probably the Wasp more specifically, but those can be noticed having a little more hookup to them. But Maltas, I will say from my personal experience, Maltas are very some Maltas are pretty straight that have this finish, and then some Maltas are actually pretty overstable. So unfortunately, comments are gonna have to help us out here to let us know sort of how to shop for Maltas if you're one of those people. But I would also say the new MD3s, a new C-Line MD3 from Discmania is a great example of this. Super straight, it's gonna have that fade at the end. Really, really wonderful. I love this. I think people try to gloss over mids because we push. Throw your putters, and then your putters start going super far, and then so you just make the jump to fairways because mid-ranges feel useless. I love throwing mids. Putters are always going to be my favorite thing to throw, but mid-ranges, when you learn to unlock your mid-range game, I think you're going to learn how to score less stressful disc golf rounds. All right, next on the list, you knew that we had to talk about it, guys. You knew we had to talk about it. Oink oink, it's a pig. I love the pig. The pig is by far the disc that I've probably thrown more pig shots in my life than probably the next 2 molds combined. I've been throwing pigs for years now. Absolutely love this mold. It's an OG. Haters are going to say that the Zone came first, but factually, it didn't. But the Zone's really good. If you like the Zone, check it out. This is the overstable putt and approach disc slot. Best part about this aspect of the game is that it truly comes down to dealer's choice. You can throw whatever you want in this slot. If you are taking disc golf seriously, if you're trying to score, even if you're a casual player, you're like, well, I don't take disc golf seriously, I just want to beat my friends. Adding that overstable punt approach disc slot to your bag can be huge. Now, reasons I love the pig: thumb track feels incredible on a forehand. I feel like I have the angle control that I'm looking for at all times. I love the depth of the pig. I have huge hands, and I love that my finger, there's still so much space under the rim. Now, for some people, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be too deep, and you're going to feel like when you try to throw a forehand with this, it latches on. It hangs onto your finger. And I get that. I feel the exact opposite feeling when I throw some of the other ones. But y'all, if we were to just list overstable punt approach molds that I can see standing right here, I do not think that Silas would have enough space on the screen to put all of them. Toro, Pig, Rat, AVR X3, AVR 3. Some of you are going to be like, the AVR 3 is not actually one. Horny Toad, Razor Claw, Zone. You have the Ringer GT. You have the Zone GT. You've got the Tempo, the Entropy, the A2, the A3, the A5. What's beautiful about these is that you know when you throw them, they're going to go out there and they're going to crash. Whether you throw it on a backhand and they crash this way, or you throw it on a forehand and they crash this way, finding that can be super helpful for you. Now, the problem that we talk about constantly in the pig world, this is our Pro Plastic, so it's going to beat in. If you're jumping into overstable punt approach molds, I would highly encourage you to avoid the heartbreak that I experience on a constant basis and find an overstable punt approach disc to fall in love with that is in premium plastic. Don't go with the pig, because then it was waiting until I until I eat dust and I end up under the ground. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna end up under the ground. I'm doing a Viking funeral. It's gonna be epic. Flaming arrow, all that jazz. What would I do elsewise? You're gonna have find one premium plastic so it'll hold that overstable flight for as long as possible. But there is a benefit to the base plastic, and that's going to take us to our final disc, Precious Child. Precious Child is a Tour Series pig. This is from the 2020 Tour Series, Ricky Wysocki. You can see that she's puddle topped, she's a little warped, she's super beat in, and she is so understable. Signed by Matthew Sardo, who also has a Precious Child. Here's where I'm at, is if you have a super beat in pig that's Precious Child as for you is starting to get that warped, and we meet and we play together, I'm gonna have you sign it so that the Precious Child gang can all be on here. History, the origin of Precious Child, how did she come to be, how did I land on pigs? To take you back to that, I had to go back to when I first started playing disc golf in 2012. In 2012 to 2017, 2018, I did not throw overstable plane approach discs. I, in fact, was spending so little time like looking up how to improve my form. I legitimately thought that you weren't allowed to change your form. Like if you wanted to play better, you just simply had to want it more, which is part of what inspired me to like create my YouTube channel and try to help people change those forms before you locked in so many bad habits. Precious Child, how did I used to approach? Before I found overstable punt approach discs, I actually used to use an XT Nova, and I was coming from Ultimate. And so I was a handler in Ultimate, and one of my favorite shots to break the defense was I could hit some nasty hammers. I was inspired by the Dark Horse himself, watching his videos, and he taught me how to throw a Frisbee. So hitting them with the XT Nova, I would throw hammer approaches with an XT Nova, and they would hit flat and slide towards the basket. And then probably one every 10 times I would do that throw, and I would throw it in because it felt like I was just hitting a person in transition. So, first overstable punt approach disc that I ended up finding, the AVR X3. The AVR X3, incredible disc, great flyer. Where I started struggling with the AVR X3 was at 250 feet. If I was hitting it on a forehand, it stopped fading, it started going straight. So with the AVR X3 holding too straight for me, I wanted to try some other options. And really, it came down to 3 molds that I tested out. It was the Pig, it was the Tactic by Discmania, and it was the A2, which I must have had like a really straight A2 because I recently tested the A2 at the beginning of this year, and y'all, way more stability than I was just thinking a stock one might have. But I grabbed Precious Child, or I actually had 2. I had a twin, it was the exact same color, exact same run, and I took it and it was in my bag after the Pig had won the battle. It was in my bag for probably 2 months. I really loved it. It was my first pig that I fell in love with, and I was at Wallace Community College, the Lion's Den, up in, I believe it's Hansville, Alabama, and I was up there, hole 18, right next to the water, and I went to throw my shot, and I threw my approach, put it a little too high, the wave got a hold of it, and it carried into the water, and y'all, I was so worried about that disc that I literally, while I was there, I am sprinting after that disc, literally removing my shirt while sprinting after the disc to try to dive into the water and like kick it off my shoes, trying to make sure that I could save that disc. And sadly, I didn't. But if you go back and you actually watch the beginning videos on my channel, like way back when, and I never really try to push people back to those videos because hopefully you've seen the quality kind of increase over time. This disc right here went in about March of 2021 is where this hit the bag, and it has actually, it's never left my bag. It is the best part about cycling base plastic pigs. If there has to be a silver lining to the fact that they're never going to give us Halo Star pigs, this is it. Because it seasons into this beautiful flyer, beautiful turnover. And so what does this shot do for me? I can throw it easy at hyzer flips every single time. I can throw it on hard and hyzer, and because it's a pig, it's not going to burn over. So I would recommend most people find an overstable disc that you love in base plastic and season it in. The person who inspired me with this the most is, this is an AVR, but I know Calvin Heimberg throws the AVR X3 in DX plastic, and it's super beat in, and it still has, like, he can yam on it with some power, but it's not going to go crazy on him because it's still an overstable disc. So love that. Precious Child, She's a beauty. Let me know what overstable disc do you throw, and if you consider throwing one. I know a lot of people love jawbreaker zones. I know people love 300 plastic 8.2s. So many different options out there, like baseline tactics. Also phenomenal. So that's going to wrap up today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much. A little insight into what we love to throw, what we have in the bag. These are my favorite 5 discs. Were there any that I didn't mention? I know some of you are going to be like, Mr. YouTube, man, you didn't talk about the polecat, and you love the polecat. I didn't talk about the polecat because honestly, I'm trying a disc out in the polecat slot right now anyways, so super interesting. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. Any other content ideas or stories that you want to hear behind the channel, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.